Now call to order the regular meetings of the Trustees of the Saratoga Springs Public Library. First item is to approve the minutes from the May 2026 meeting. It's that one update which I think made it into the final packet.
Yes, there's the, they're in the packet, they're just not on the agenda, it's included inside.
Okay. The minutes. Minutes. Yes, but there was one change. There was an error in the date.
Oh, actually, that error in the date didn't list time yet.
I did not.
No, so we can approve it with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody have any questions, concerns, changes? Now, or I'll accept the motion.
Adoption as corrected.
Thanks, Terry.
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Right.
Want to make a small change to our agenda? We have Jen and Art here from MV to talk about audit, and I'd like to offer from unfinished business to now so that she can get through the information that she needs to give to us. All right, come in, Jen.
Thank you. So I'm Jen Menard. I'm a senior manager from MMB & Co. We are your external auditors. So we started the audit back in November, and we actually issued our reports in April. So I'm going to go over this pretty high level. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail. I'm not going to go over a bunch of the numbers. If there are any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer those, but I am going to go a little bit high level on this. So if you want to go to page 1. Perfect. So within the financial statement packet, the only piece that belongs to the auditors is the actual reports that contain our opinions. The rest of the financial statement packet is the responsibility of management. We do assist management in putting the financial statements together. We prepare those, and then I can Eric review them and approve them. So we just make sure that all of the footnotes are in there and correct and in the form and content that they need to be. So on this first page here, we have, if you scroll up a little, we've got our opinions. So what this says is that in that second paragraph, that the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the library. What that is an unmodified opinion. As your auditors, that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide. So that's what you're always striving for, is that unmodified opinion. If we go down a little bit, you can see that we've got a correction of an error paragraph this year. So that is in addition to the independent auditors report this year. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the footnotes. We are going to skip ahead to page 4. It's going to say management's discussion and analysis at the top right there. So pages 4 through, I think 9 in yours. Yeah, 4 through 9 are management's discussion and analysis, also known as the MD&A. This is a really important piece to the financial statement packet for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that this is where management has the opportunity to tell your story and to really communicate what's affecting the library financially, what do you expect to come in the future. And this is also the only place within your financial statements that you will find comparative information. Everything else is on a single year presentation. So if you wanted kind of a synopsis of the financial statements without reading all however many pages it is, this is a great spot to get that. Going down to page 15, it's after all of the tables and such. And nope. Where we're going to start. Okay, there. So I'm not going to go through all of these in page by page, but all of your significant accounting policies and the nature of the operations of the library are all contained in financial statement note 1. So this is a really robust footnote. It's several pages of information. Page 17. Perfect. So for 6/30/25, the library did adopt and implement two new GASB standards. So statement number 101 was compensated absences, and statement number 102 was certain risk disclosures. Statement number 102 had zero impact and really required no evaluation on the part of management. Statement number 101 was compensated absences, and that did require management to consider if there was a need to change the way the compensated absences were reported. Luckily for you guys, the way that your employment contracts are written, there was no change to the calculation, so there was not a significant change to your financial statements as a result of this standard implementation. We did add some information into one of the footnotes. We'll cover that. Under this future accounting standards, I'm not expecting GASB statement 104 or 105 to have a significant impact on the library. However, for 6/30/26, we do have statement number 103. This is the financial reporting model improvements. This is going to have an impact on the library's financial statements. So we'll need to talk about that. Basically what this is going to do is revamp the MD&A. There's information that is now required to be part of the MD&A. There are things that are not allowed to be in the MD&A. So we are actually working through this right now with our school district clients, because they're our first 6/30/26 that we'll be going through. So by the time we get to the library, I will have all kinds of information. It'll be fantastic. So we'll work with Ike to make sure that you have a GASB 103 compliant MD&A. There's also some information if you have certain required supplementary information. There's requirements on some footnotes to that information. So there are different components to this one. So we'll work with Ike to make sure that we've got everything where it needs to be on that. If you go down a couple of pages to page 19, we're going to hit the employee benefits and compensated absences footnote. So this footnote last year was really a very small paragraph and it didn't contain a lot of information. And what you'll see is that this now goes on to the second page, and it's a much more robust footnote. And that was to comply with GASB statement 101. There was certain information that was really required to be in the footnotes in addition to the actual calculation being revisited. Headed to page 35. We footnote 10. Right, so as I had mentioned, when I was looking at the auditor's report, we did have a correction of an error this year. So as we were going through our final review processes, we had a question on the deferred revenue that was still on the books. And we needed to disclose that information. And when we reached out, it was actually related to a project that had been completed in a prior year. So when you receive money that you haven't expended yet, that money has to go into deferred revenue. So you can't recognize the revenue until you've actually expended the funds. When this project completed, those funds should have gone from deferred revenue and actually been recognized as revenue, and that didn't happen. So we corrected that. That had an impact on your beginning fund equity for both the general fund and the government-wide financial statements. So that information is detailed here as to what that correction was. Skipping ahead to page 41, this is the second auditor's report that's in the financial statement packet. This is the report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. And that is based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. So what this does is this goes through the report on internal control over financial reporting. It is important to note that we do not opine on your internal controls, but as part of the audit process, we are required to look at your system of internal controls. And we are also required to see if they are implemented and functioning properly. So again, we don't opine on this. However, when we run into an issue, we do report it to those charged with governance. So you can see that at the bottom of this first page, we identified a deficiency in internal control that we consider to be a material weakness. So if we skip ahead 2 pages. So this is not a new audit finding. We've had this, I think, as long as I've been on this audit, which is a very long time at this point. So going through the audit, we make several adjustments throughout. And this really is mostly this year referring to that deferred revenue, because that revenue was the deferred revenue was overstated and your revenue was understated in a prior year. And then health insurance liabilities were overstated and expenditures were understated by approximately $36,000. So those adjusting entries were made during the audit. Are there any questions on the financial statement packet itself? Yes.
There was a page that said to the left, column AJE, and I just didn't know that I meant.
Just adjusting journal.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Interesting journal entry.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, and then there was a recommendation about just oversight or review.
Mhm.
And I just didn't know if the auditors have some say in who you all would have manage that review, like, is it a committee kind of thing? Or just what, how it has been reviewed in the past?
Are you talking in response to this finding in particular?
I think it was really more general about reviewing. I think there were 2 items.
So that's on the next letter, sure. So if you go to the management letter. Oh, where is she? It's on to the. It's on the finding. No, it's the 265. So this letter, I think, is what you're referring to.
Yes, thank you.
So on this letter, again, we are not opining on your internal controls. So there are 3 levels of a finding that we can issue as your auditors. There's a material weakness, which is where that deferred revenue finding fell into. There's a significant deficiency, which is less in severity than a material weakness, but still important enough to bring to those charged with governance and is required to be in that report that's within your financial statement package. Then there's another level of a finding that's called an other matter, and that can be a separate management letter comment. So that really essentially goes to management, it goes to the board. So that is where we have 2 additional findings this year. So we have the adjustments related to cash to accrual. So when we come in an ideal world, we would not have to make any journal entries and we would not have to assist in that process. So last year's accruals would be reversed, this year's accruals would be made, all of that would be done prior to us arriving. That does not happen and has not happened. So this finding really goes through all of the different entries that we have to make to help to bring your books from cash to accrual, because you are required to report under accrual basis.
And conversely, when we're reporting to the state, we're required to report on a cash basis. So that's where it can kick.
Yes, because GASB and the state do not always go closely together. So here we recommend that management review and report adjustments periodically throughout the year and at year end. And then we recommend the transactions near year end be reviewed to determine the inclusion in the proper fiscal year. So there are certain things that, are required to be booked under the accrual basis. Accounts payable, for example, so an item that you've received the item, but you haven't paid for it yet, but you've got the invoice because you have the item, that has to be in accounts payable and in your expenditures for the period in which the item was received. That's not always recorded in accounts payable, so we assist with that. So really certain things at the end of the year, salary accruals, vacation accruals, all of those type of items should be reviewed and booked into the QuickBooks file prior to the audit work starting. And that review is really, I think probably best done at, Eric's level and with Ike's oversight. I don't think that it's not a board level type of review. And then the leases and subscription-based information technology arrangements, really, this is that there's not a documented consideration of the completeness or valuation over recording leases. So under GASB 87, which was implemented a few years ago, as well as 96, you're now required to calculate and disclose leases in a certain manner. And the biggest concern here is, are all of the leases included in those calculations? Excuse me, so really what we would like to see and what should be happening is that management documents, these are all of our leases. Here are the terms, here are the amounts, monthly or annually or whatever that might be. And that way, when we go in to look at it, we can say all of the leases are now considered. Because we can look in your general ledger and we can typically identify what is a lease, but not always. Depends on how it's booked. So our biggest concern here is just making sure that all of the leases are accounted for and any subscription-based technology arrangements are accounted for in the manner in which they're supposed to be. Does that help? Or did that answer your question?
Yes, it's just Eric and the usual, meeting folks. Thank you.
Any questions on this letter?
How are the leases being entered before? That they,
So prior to GASB 87, it was really just expensed as you go, which that's still allowed under certain circumstances. With the implementation of GASB 87, you're now required to look at that lease as a whole over the life of the lease and to really almost more straight line it than just pay as you go. And it's supposed to be, if you have significant leases, there needs to be a right of use asset and a right of use liability, and then you'll only expense certain amounts of it throughout the year.
because it's a long term.
Correct. Correct. That really came about more so on the non-government side of life, where bankers were really saying, we need to know what commitments these organizations have related to leases, because a lot of places lease, 50 copiers or whatever it might be, or you think of like,
They don't know what their commitments
the
are.
big organizations, they don't want to read 100 pages or 500 pages of footnotes to find the lease footnote. So it's always been something that's been disclosed in the footnotes. They just felt that it was a little bit buried. All right, so this last one is the required communication to those charged with governance. So this is a pretty standard letter. You're gonna see this every year. It doesn't really change a whole lot. So it goes through what our responsibilities are as your auditors. It then goes through that we are required to be independent of the library and of management. So there are certain things that impair our independence, and one of those things is actually financial statement preparation. So as part of our response to that impairment, we have Ike that reviews the financial statements, Eric looks at the financial statements. We also have a partner that is independent of the audit. So they are not the audit partner, they have nothing to do with the audit, but they actually go through the financial statements prior to issuance to make sure that everything looks correct and that we're not missing any significant footnotes or anything like that. So they go through, and that actually satisfies that threat to our independence. Significant risks identified. I always spend a second on this paragraph because people read it and they kind of freak out a little bit. So as part of the audit, we are required to identify what significant areas of risk are within your financial statements. And we do that before we look at any numbers. We can take a set of financial statements and we look at it and we say, okay, this, and this are areas that are going to be higher risk. And then we perform our audit procedures and we design our audit procedures in relation to responding to those risks. So in every set of financial statements, management override of controls is a significant risk. And that is because it does not matter what type of internal controls you have. If management really wanted to circumvent those controls, there are ways for them to do that. So that's an area that we beef up our audit procedures, and we really look at some nitty-gritty detailed things to make sure that we don't run into an issue there. If we had any sort of an issue within this area related to these significant risks, we would have had a conversation in December when we were going through the audit procedures. This would not be something that we would be talking
This
about
is just
now.
an ongoing existing risk that's always there.
It's always there. So that is actually a presumptively mandatory risk. I can't talk that one away. The other one that is typically included as a presumptively mandatory is revenue recognition. But because 99% of your revenue comes from the tax levy, there's really not a substantial risk of revenue recognition concerns for the library. This continues to go on and describe where to find your significant accounting policies, and it talks that we implemented GASB 101 and 102 this year. It also goes on to talk about significant accounting estimates, which for the library, the most significant estimates are compensated absences, your other post-employment benefits liability, and the estimate of the net pension asset and liability. So your GASB 68, your GASB 75, so ERS, OPEB, and your compensated absences. Those all contain certain elements of estimate that are just uncontrollable for the library, and they could change, and the results at the end could vary, pretty substantially from what the original estimate was. All of these numbers are booked based on the best information that you have at the time. So going down. So we have this uncorrected and corrected misstatements footnote. It's ahead of where you are. So this talks about all of the different journal entries that were made throughout the audit process. And this really goes back to that management letter comment on those cash to accrual basis entries. All of that is included in here. So you can see that there's quite a bit of dollars in different areas of the financial statements that are adjusted prior to us being able to issue those financial statements. Going down a little bit more, it talks about disagreements with management. We have none. Management is always very pleasant and very easy to work with. And then that's really it for this letter. Any questions on that? Any questions on anything that I haven't covered?
Thank you, that was very good.
Absolutely, you're welcome. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, and I will be in touch, and we will
It's all over.
we'll do it all over again. And we'll talk about GASB 103. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on to approval of the expenditures. First item is request for reallocation. Which is in the final packet, this wasn't. I do want to just talk us through these a little bit.
It is typical when we get to this point in the year or toward the very end of the year as things fall out to sea. And when we are making the request for, I tend to, when I'm making the request for reallocation, try to do sort of apples to apples things. So things that might be salary and benefit related, try to move those things around. With salaries, as we've been talking, we're very close to the bubble, but we've got two more, I think, pay periods which are not accounted for. And just to be on the safe side, we did have a departure. Rick has retired, and there was a pretty significant unanticipated payout of his accrued vacation time, and so that'll add to the outgo to that line as well. Health insurance, I feel like at some point earlier in the year, I'd asked to reallocate more money into that line, just being worried about where things were gonna fall out, but we seem to be in a good place, so that's why I feel comfortable for us to take money. To move money from that into salaries. For retirement, which actually didn't make it into the reallocation request, but there should be a line added up there. A request to move $25,000 out of the retirement line into the salaries line as well.
Where is the line?
No, it's the first one.
Is it, oh, it's the top one, I'm sorry. Because we paid our big retirement bill for the year, and so that's the balance that's left.
Any questions? Take a motion to approve the reallocations.
I mean, we approve the reallocation request as reflected on the chart.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry, all in favor? Next, we have prepaid checks 74748 to 74750 for the $3,071. And then we have the large warrants and checks. Does they pay?
It should say,
Okay, right?
it should say June, actually. So that's. No,
June warrants and checks.
it's-
Everybody moves that, I was looking at the numbers. June warrants and checks, 74751 to 74831, total $154,219.71. Any questions? I have to approve the expenditures.
So for the record being.
Sarah second.
Second.
Maybe Jim, all in favor? This sense approval of the financial reports. This is June. So the main, the June page. Summary sheet, the budget report.
And
Yes,
the,
or
yeah, in the budget report, just so you know, reflects the prior to the reallocation, so it will be adjusted.
are there any questions on the budget report? If not, we can go to the income report.
Just to bring to your attention, a thing that you might have questions for, this love your library fund, that $134.81 is when you. Taxes, when you complete your taxes or state taxes, you've got all those little boxes that you can check. Do you want a portion of your refund to go toward wildlife preserve? One of those things is the love your library fund, and this $134 there's a number that goes to the system, and then all of the libraries in the system get the same amount of money from this fund. So all of the
It's not distributed.
per capita or anything, it's just,
Okay.
that might be to the system, but then they divide it up equally among them.
Move approval of the financial report. Second.
Thank you. All in favor? We have the president's report. We heard last month from Ed Lindner about bike lanes, and he discussed drafting a letter that reflected support and the desire to have some further conversation. That letter was drafted and will go out. So had that city council meeting last Tuesday, where some of that discussion was going on. And then I also want to say thank you to Frank for,
Thank you, it's been a great experience, really nice. I love it. I've learned so much from all of you. And I have a lot of respect for all of you, too. Your enthusiasm, you bring to your job. It's been my pleasure. Thanks. That's it. Well, you were better. Well, I'm always around. And, just, I could always run again some other time, or you guys need help with something.
so we have with comments and to the guest. Okay. Correspondence and communication. And we are on to last week.
So I don't know if there were any questions, but just to highlight that as I was chatting with Jen here, that maybe in the first time in the history of construction projects, we came in ahead of schedule and under budget. So what that meant is that we didn't meet our match in terms of the grant that we were approved for from the Division of Library Development. We were a little worried, and the way they do the grant, like after the project, long after the project was done, we finally got the final approval. We got the first 90% for the amount that was approved based on an estimate we had received from a contractor about what it would cost to do it. We didn't even meet the match with the first 90%. So we were worried that we might have to send some money back to the state, but we learned that what we can do instead is change the scope of the project to add additional work, even if it's not related to the elevator, if it's related to something else that we are planning to do, like the fire suppression system and those sorts of things, or something more fun, like a roof garden or a green roof or something. But that we do have another couple of years to come up with a project to spend both our money and the grant money on. So we're not in a position to send any money back, but it was kind of shocking that we even came close to being that far under budget. So I think it's good news for us.
You have a period of time.
2 years they said for us. And then, of course, our other big news, which might have come to a surprise, as a surprise to you, came as a little bit of a surprise to us, is that Rick retired with very short notice, but he's got, he's got all kinds of things going on in his life, with his family. His wife wants him home, they want to travel, he's got some other personal things going on, and he was ready to retire and made a decision. And we wish him the best of luck in his retirement. So we are working on, we've received about 5 applications.
More than that, but we have 3 external and 1 internal
Okay,
that we're gonna be interviewing.
and so we're scheduling interviews beginning next week for
Now, he really will be missed.
I think that's about it. I did love being the pronouncer again at the BOCES Regional Spelling Bee. It's a lot of fun. Especially from my vantage point where I'm sitting facing the children, reading the words to them. I don't see all the cheers that are happening behind me when they're.
That's a practice of words in advance.
Normally they send the words in advance, but this year they didn't get an opportunity to do that, so it was So what I did, Terry, is when there was a word that I wasn't certain of, I just skipped it and went on to the next word.
Hey. You'll have some questions for Ike, we'll move on to Jen.
I have nothing as my report, except for that. I have actually filled out all the spreadsheets for our, space use and study, and so maybe at our next meeting, I might have like 4 months worth of data to share something.
Okay, that's great. Good to get an update. Thank you. Right, Don.
Let's see, oh yeah, we're still pushing forward the board reports, which will look a little different, more like the, stated, well, yeah, it'll look more like this particular version of the agenda. The reports will be linked at the bottom, all the individual reports will be able to click on, you can actually also open these, I think, we were interested in a full packet view. I think Katie is, we'll have a full packet view that I can just continue to scroll through. And well, probably instead of like sending everybody the PDFs, we'll send a link to this. Everybody will be able to see this, pull up all the agenda, it'll be nicer, I mean, maybe not nicer, but similar. And we'll be compliant. Brittany's working on all that. Cookies, I don't know if anybody has any questions about that, it was just a kind of a little. When we introduced our new pack age, cookies was a sticking point for some patrons that got caught in a loop and couldn't get out. And so Jay is addressing it, I'm staying on top of them because there's a little bit of a hitch in it, it's not quite abiding by what patrons select. Generally, you can opt out of all cookies, which sometimes kicks you off, so you can pick basic cookies, or you can pick all the cookies, which allows them to sort of track you, and you get those Google pop-ups that say you were searching for this or that on another page. Clearly, it's working, people just correcting the issue, but right now it's, well, last time I did. So we are still. We're working on that, and office, we're installing real office on all the public computers. That was kind of a little test of ours to see if the free versions of Office were acceptable to our patrons, and for the diehards to come in here and type all day long, they preferred the other one, so we went back with James help and some grants. Got that. And we're getting covers, speaking of the leases. Exciting. Next week.
Is that the 1-year grant, you know, off the top of your head,
For what?
the grant,
For,
was that like for 1 year or for more?
oh, it was a single grant, single monetary
Yeah.
thing for the office. It's a standalone section, it's not the subscription based office.
Gotcha,
We purchased it.
so now we have it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's what they decided
That's
to
great,
take away from us. It's all online,
right,
but yeah, we own it, we sell it.
one less lease to keep track of.
Yes. We're not.
Ever.
So it wasn't reflected in this long chart of numbers and et cetera. But yeah, parking came back in a big way. Right? So it's not no surprise to anyone. So more, it seems like, I was looking at the number of parking permits that we issued this past month compared to prior months. And, there were some more, it wasn't, massive amount more, but the number of questions about parking in general. And I've realized that we have our own Y2K event that's coming soon, and that is June 10th, 2027. You know, what's gonna happen? Because on the parking portal site where we enter the information for our patrons to get their parking permits, it says that the expiration date for parking permits is June 10th, 2027. And we're not sure what that means. I don't think the city, I mean, they haven't indicated, we've asked, and they said, well, we're not there yet. So, so again, I'm thinking ahead, I'm like, yeah, this is a bug to get, who knows, will the permits just kind of like poof or what, but I'm thinking ahead for couple potential scenarios and workarounds, and anything that's going on in my head, I will certainly run by the people that need to know. I'm not gonna go rogue. But I think, and I'm hoping that we will be okay. They will say people can maybe keep their permits or whatever. So, but yeah, a lot of questions about what's gonna happen next year, but people were happy to say, okay, we cross that bridge when we come to it next year. No, otherwise, any questions? I don't really have much else to add. Okay, well, thank you all.
Good.
The only thing I wanted to kind of highlight for you is when I talk about school visits. We are visiting every single school in person this year except the high school, which when I started here, it was during the pandemic and we got to go to maybe one school in person. So the fact that we're physically in every building this year is really, really exciting. It's a lot of work. There's a handful of classes that something always goes wrong. There's always a fire drill, but especially in the elementary, we are seeing pretty much every single, which is really impressive. Gina makes a little brochure for us. We, have a little printing press going and they all get, and even the kids that we don't see in person still get this handout. So, not just to brag, like we work so hard because we do, but I want you to understand, like, it's a really big endeavor. And I know sometimes people are sad that we don't do as many story times or something into, but I'm really proud of us that we are going to every elementary this year. This is the first year, at least since I've been here, that we're visiting every single one. So I'm really excited. I got to do a lot of visits myself so far, so I can tell you how fun it is. And I've been getting thank you cards. It's so fun. So it's really exciting. We're gearing up for a really fun
Questions? Need more details about.
I was gonna bring you guys a towel and I forgot. I'll bring it next one.
So funny, because I saw the thing in the list of checks. And I said, towels first, and I wasn't looking over to the right, like, where's my towels?
Oh, they are really nice. They're down at the children's desk if you can't wait, but I'll bring one next month so you guys can see it. They have our custom summer reading logo. Gina's designed a summer reading logo just for Saratoga Library a few years ago, and we reuse it every year so that it's that memory. And so we do use the CSLP logo, like the theme, like this year it's on the story, but all of our stuff also has our custom branding. And she worked really hard on it. So the beach towels have it huge and they're nice big, like even really nice. So I'll bring one next month. I forgot to grab one. Okay.
Great, Jamie. Hey, I just want to draw your attention to under the digital resources, electronic periodicals, New York Times All Access was new for this budget year. And the numbers just keep going up, more and more users. This past month, that was just the month, it had over 68,000 page views and 37,000 games played. So New York Times is like the crossword and Wordle and things like that. So those would just keep going up. So that was definitely a great addition for this year. And also we could not keep up with the desire for Mahjong. New, but Mahjong people are rabid, so. Any question? Is Robin teaching the question? She is. Yeah.
we've got two classes going on, a daytime one and an evening one. This is the first time we've done an evening one. And each of them has a waiting list as big as the amount of people in the class. So it's crazy.
And we understand she might be moving, so I don't know what's gonna happen.
Right, this is the first I've heard that. Don't tell me that.
Can I ask about the farm to library and the expiring food? I'm confused. You, like people just aren't taking it and so it expires?
Oh, no, people have taken all of them by like Friday, we get deliveries on Wednesday, pretty much by Friday, we're gonna figure it out. Some people, even though they're not supposed to, community members will bring food and put it like on the shelves or.
You
on
mean
the
from their house or something?
Yes, from their house, and those, sometimes it's expired stuff, and so we just need, better signage to tell people, please don't.
Do you want donations from the community?
We do not,
So,
yeah, the, well, farm to library does not. want
Okay.
it.
okay. I was just, I couldn't figure out what was happening there, like.
Yeah.
People think they're helping.
Yes, yeah, which is wonderful, but.
You leave us presents every.
Yeah.
I don't have much to add, but we have two people to appoint, but I did want to talk a little bit about Ron. He worked here for a long time. And he resigned in 2020. But he is back seasonally. He goes back and forth between here in Florida, so. With some discussion, we decided to bring him on as building officer. He's very nice. That's great.
But he's going away.
But he's here sort of more than he's away, kind of, so he usually leaves end of November. And then comes back very, very early spring. So we'll get to that point when, I'm not sure what we'll do at that point, but you know, see how it goes.
But it was a great kind of stopgap
Yeah.
solution when I was walking through the library, they said, hey, are you hiring? And I'm like, "Oh, sure." Yeah.
You wanna go ahead and just do those appointments? Okay. So we have requests to appoint Saratoga leader and Don Hedrick. Point,
So,
is there a second? Carrie, all in favor?
Alright.
Thank you. Don't have any other committee reports. We've done our unfinished business. We have one other piece of new business. Which is a foundation for Frank. So you'll have to bear with me, it's a lot of whereases. Whereas Saratoga Springs Public Library is recognized by the community as an outstanding public service, and whereas among the greatest resources of the library are the knowledge, skills, abilities, and dedication of its trustees to the ideals of library service to the community. And whereas Frank Brady was first elected to the Board of Trustees of Saratoga Springs Public Library in 2016. And whereas Frank Brady has served as treasurer of the Board of Trustees, and whereas Frank Brady served multiple terms as president of the Board of Trustees. And whereas Frank Brady's efforts to expand and diversify the library's Board of Trustees will help to ensure representation and input about library services from a multitude of segments of our community. And whereas Frank was instrumental in the creation of the library's library district treasurer division, helping to ensure safe stewardship of public funds entrusted to it. And whereas Frank Brady's insight while revising and updating library bylaws, policies, and guidelines will have lasting impact on library and board operations, helping to ensure compliance with ethical and legal standards. And whereas Frank Brady's leadership of the library board during the global pandemic helped to ensure that library services continue to be offered and library staff remain fully employed during a tumultuous time in its history. And whereas Frank Brady has demonstrated empathy, kindness, and patience in his interactions with library staff, fellow trustees, and library users. And whereas Frank Brady's curiosity, breadth of knowledge, and good humor has made him an exemplary representative on the library's board. And whereas Frank Brady has served the library and the community faithfully and well for 10 years, contributing to the library's record of service and accomplishments now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 8th day of June in the year 2026, Frank Brady receives a commendation, gratitude, and appreciation of the staff and board of trustees of the Saratoga Springs Public Library for his service to the library and the people of the community, and best wishes for good health and much happiness in the years to come.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think that actually requires action.
Oh, please Frank, make the motion.
I think I have to abstain.
Please have a motion to amend, Frank.
Leave it more to-
Okay, Carol. All in favor? Aye. Okay. I believe that brings us to the end of the regular agenda. We now will need to have a session.
We have some refreshments if we want to take a minute before.
Yes, please.
And we left the inappropriate apostrophe Frank, just so we know your work, our work is never done.
Well, you know, I debated coming, whether to come to the last meeting, but I'm saying you had cake. so.
Okay.
Then it's just a,
We're calling the alarm that's.
I think it's just an on, it's a key.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
Everyone eat cake. It's good.